District trustees allow for time for those individuals who like the opportunity to address the fire district trustees on matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the trustees is asked to limit their comment time to 3 minutes. Anybody have anything they'd like to say?
I will.
Okay.
Your name, just for, so I can have notes.
Teresa. Carangelo.
I missed Trudy.
Teresa. T-E-R-E-S-A.
Teresa, okay.
You want me to spell my last name too, Brian?
Please.
C-A-R-I-N-G-E-L-L-O.
Thank you. Yeah, my spelling's.
That's okay, no problem, Brian. I'll help you out. To the board, on the proposal meeting on Tuesday, a lot of questions and concerns were given to you. We haven't heard anything back from you. But today's meeting, you guys are jumping right to an agreement of a proposal and a reopening of a budget. I think that's insane and ridiculous. The city of Knollwood, city of Lake Bluff, and everybody else have concerns. I know you guys have met with the two chiefs in regards to legal aspects of this contract, and we saw it. But you still have not answered the questions and the concerns that the city has. Dan Rogers wrote, as a fiscal responsible trustee, I think you look at the people around you and see what's best for your area. These people have concerns, Roger, and you still have not told them. These people don't want this fire district, this fire department to close. And here you are opening for a vote today, if there is a vote today, depending on what the action was yesterday, weren't it? This is disgusting and it's a disgrace. You say you're doing what is best for these people, you're doing what is best for yourself. Admit it for once. Everybody else has admitted what they want, except for you. You want to do it for yourself, not for what is best for Knollwood.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, it's Julie Brennan. I am a resident of Knollwood, and with full disclosure, I am a Director of Emergency Services at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. And as of yet, I have not said anything or spoken about any of my concerns. And I will speak as a resident, not as a representative of the hospital or any other person. When we talk about consolidation of services, a lot of times that should be looking to eliminate bureaucracy or overhead of not life safety people, okay? And I have a major concern when we talk about consolidation and moving these services to other entities. Knollwood Fire responds to areas currently with an ALS engine with actual trained medical professionals. And I work very closely with both of the chiefs, again, being in the emergency department. And we have never had issues with any of those services. But my main concern is when we talk about response times, and that's one of the big things, is life safety for a patient in and of itself. I do think we are going to increase response times in the Knollwood area and areas that Knollwood currently respond to. And when we're talking minutes, minutes are lives. And right now, when Knollwood responds, they respond in 3 minutes. And backing them up with an ambulance is Libertyville currently. And in the past, I know it has been Lake Forest. Lake Forest and Libertyville's response teams showing up in 8 minutes is not an issue when you have somebody there administering life-saving techniques in 3 minutes time. An ambulance to transport 5 minutes after that, not a problem, but an ambulance showing up 8 minutes when no life safety is being administered is a major concern. Again, I am speaking as a resident, not as anybody else from the emergency department or speaking poorly against any of those services. I just have concerns, especially when we talk on responses. Again, they're administering life-saving, immediate life-saving in 3 minutes versus waiting any longer.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
My name is Brian Harrington. I'm a resident of the Sanctuary subdivision. And I have read through the proposed agreement that the board's supposed to consider today, and there's a provision in there relating to reimbursement for ambulance transports. And it suggests that under the new arrangement, there'll be a charge to be retained by the Fire Protection District for ambulance service calls made to residents, and I presume guests of residents. I wonder if the board today could address what we currently pay for those services, both on a per call or an aggregate basis, and what happens when those revenues go away from Rockland Fire Protection District and go to Libertyville.
Thank you for your comments.
No answer today. You're not
Ryan,
going
can you
to
explain
get
that to
They won't
people so
answer you.
that?
Well, this is a public comment. I don't know.
This
They
is
won't.
public comment.
It's a new law, it's a new rule. Don't worry
No,
about
it's
it.
not.
They won't answer.
All persons should be reminded, this is a regular meeting, and the procedures for public comment that the board adopted in February this year apply. You're allowed 3 minutes to address the board. The board will not respond. And that's done intentionally to avoid any assertions or allegations of discrimination. We respond to one and not another. We're not going to respond to others. I suspect when we get to the part about the agreement itself, we're going to comment on some of the comments that I have, that I put in the draft, that I said I was going to bring to the board's attention, just to bring it to their edification, because it's really a decision by the board. It's not my decision, it's their decision. It's up to the gang of three. But, okay?
Okay. Anybody else have a comment?
Forgive me if this was already reiterated, but I would just like to express my discontent with the fact that this was scheduled at 3 p.m. on a Friday before a holiday weekend.
Could I get your name?
Benjamin Miller,
Thanks.
resident Knollwood. I was fortunate to be able to leave work early today to make it here, but not many people that I frequently discuss this topic with were not able to make it today. Shame on you all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah,
Okay.
the guys, I think, Chris Prager, live in Foster, resident for 26 years, 28 years. Gentlemen, it's all about the money. You know it, we know it. It's these communities, they aren't paying back into their pensions, and they see a fat cat right here and they want to take the cash. They've used Knollwood, Lake Forest has used Knollwood to supplement their manpower for years. And they've been able to have a skinny, thin department because of it. And so because of that situation, now they want to strong arm both Lake Bluff and Knollwood so that they can get the cash. What ends up happening is in 2040, the state Supreme Court said that they have to mandatorily have all their pensions fully funded. And if they don't have them fully funded, what they have to do is they have to then tax the tax body in order to pay for that. They could pay into their general funds, but they choose not to. They use a little stipulation, so then they can go down to the state and they can say, hey, these pension funds just aren't being able to keep them up. We can't possibly pay these things, but they're supposed to be meeting each one of those employees that are paying 9.8% of their own income into that pension. They're supposed to be matching that, but they're not doing that. They kick the can down the road. So what they can do is they can take over Knollwood, and then they're going to get to tax us as much as they choose to tax us, because they have to then pay into that pension that they've chosen never to pay into from the beginning. So if we give this up, they have the right to be able to tax the body that they're serving. You guys are going to give that away, and we're going to pay through the nose. I have no problem sharing services being a resident of Knollwood. But what I do have a problem is having these two communities come in, have, I believe, poorly run departments because they're too low staffed, and come in here, strong arm us, and then give us less services along with the people that they represent. It's just how I feel as a firefighter for 30 years at Highland Park. I feel pretty strongly about that, and I think you're crazy if you give it away, gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to number 3. Consideration of the revised Lake Forest Libertyville Service Proposal IGA, discussion and possible action. Trustees, you have Ryan's comments on here. Does anybody have any comments regarding Ryan's comments?
Would you want me to go through and just kind of briefly address each of them?
Sure, why don't we walk through it page by page, Brian? That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. So on page 1, there's nothing, that's all the preambles. That's the legal mumbo jumbo that lays out the statutory authority, the constitutional and statutory authority for what's being done. Page 2 is the same. Page 3, we finish the preambles and we start getting into the proposed intergovernmental agreement.
One second, Brian. If
Sure.
anybody has anything, just stop him in the middle of, let's not get all the way through and go back. Stop.
I had some comments about the entirety of it, not really about specific.
Well, if there's specific
details.
things, yeah, but I mean, if there's a specific line or something you want to change or you want something said about, okay. All right, your call, Carl.
Well, I don't know, I would like to make those comments, I don't know if you want to do it before you start diving into the specifics or afterwards.
Your call, whatever you'd like to do.
I'll do it ahead of time.
Okay.
All right.
So in paragraph 3, we talk
Excuse me,
about...
Brian.
Hold on, Brian. You said.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Sorry, Carl.
Yeah. And please bear with me, I made notes for myself so I can stay focused and on track and make this very succinct. As you know, I do not believe the district should enter into this or any other agreement for services at this time. Due diligence requires us to thoroughly understand current operations, potential threats, and the full impact of any changes to the method of service delivery. Clearly, this has not been done, and I request the board postpone any consideration of this agreement or any other services agreement until this has been done. I mean, we can do this a couple ways. I can make a motion at this time that we table this agreement and not undertake any other agreements until that has been done. So I would ask for a motion on that. Hearing none, then since it appears the board desires to enter into this agreement regardless, I will provide my input on the contract itself. Looking at the agreement as a whole, I find it unacceptable. It binds the district to make set payments regardless of any other factors, such as poor quality service, a decrease in the size of the district, or declining district revenues. In return, the vendor's initial offer was to, quote, to the best of their ability, provide services on the same basis as they provide within their municipalities. This is subjective and provides no concrete assurances. In the final contract, this has been weakened to include the limitation that their efforts will be as reasonably and operationally practical. In other words, if they don't find it reasonable or practical, they don't have to provide the same level of service. In addition to not having any performance standards that vendors can be measured against or held accountable to, the agreement provides no remedies or relief if the service is unacceptable. If the district were to sue for breach of contract or other just cause, a recently added termination clause would still require a 2-year notice prior to termination. While I believe the vendors will attempt to provide good service, I don't find that adequate to enter into a contract that doesn't provide any guarantees and is nearly impossible to terminate. It would be a breach of my fiduciary responsibility to accept such an agreement.
Okay, Brian, you want to continue on page 3?
Right. On page 3, paragraph 3, where we talk about village and city services, one of the changes includes the statement that the village and the city will, to the best of their ability and reasonably and operationally practical, provide such services on the same basis that each provides to the residents of properties within their corporate limits, consistent with statutory and regulatory guidelines. And this guideline. We added that expressly at the request that we have some sort of standard to measure against. If you go to page 4, item number 1 on there, it defines the first payment for the period of October 1st through April 30th, 2019, rather than a single lump sum payment. There was a request to split that in two, with the first payment due on or about October 1st and the second payment due on or about January 1st. I'll note that there's a typographical error. That's my fault. The amount in those payments should not be 131,205. They should in fact be 131,250. I switched two numbers around. Fat finger these things. Going on to subparagraph B at the middle of page 4, the payment fees, I raised a question about the fee increase provisions, and there was some discussion about that. And this is really, this provision, like the entire agreement, is really the realm of the board. But and I had some questions about the amount that might or might not represent. But having said that, this is the same language from the existing agreement, service agreement between the Village of Libertyville and the Libertyville Fire Protection District, which has been in effect for, I don't remember, some number of
North
years,
of 50 years.
40, 60 something. So that's there. But I felt it was my duty to at least highlight it to the board where that came from. I mean, okay. If you go on to page 5, at the second paragraph from the top, there's a sentence: the village and the city agree to inform the district of any changes to reimbursement rates. I added that in there. I didn't think it was proper that the board not be aware of what the charges would be. The charges for Knollwood, Rockland, whatever you want to call this, are going to be the same and uniform throughout the district. But that said, if they change them, which they're entitled to, just like we've changed ours, they're entitled to that. They need to inform the district that just because they're the corporate authority. Going on to page 5.
In order to change it, you have to know what the rate is to begin with, which we still do not have.
And that I don't have it either.
You could sign something and you don't have it.
I don't say anything. Anyway, going on to paragraph 5, Chief Karani asked me to update the percentage that the district's compensation from the Village of Libertyville for use of their station number 3, that increased. Going on to page 6, towards the bottom, the second paragraph of E, under service control. This is another section I added. That the village, the fire chiefs or designated representatives will submit regular monthly reports on services. Again, and you can all read this out. I felt it was only proper and appropriate that the district board be kept informed of what the service levels to the district were. Okay. Page 7, there were no changes. Page 8, we had a bunch of changes. Page 8, section 12, subparagraph B on termination. We went round and round about this. I didn't like the first language. They didn't like my proposed counter, so we ended up, and it's right now it says after the 10th year of the anniversary of the agreement, they can terminate for any reason. I'll tell you, I personally, our firm represents more fire departments in the state than any other firm. I personally go to 2 districts whose service is provided by agreement with a neighboring municipality, both fire and ambulance. One of the municipalities' agreements is a 3-year agreement that is renewed every 3 years. The other one is a 10-year agreement that's revisited every 3 years. So 20 years I thought was excessive, and the counter proposal was 10 years. So again, not my call. Legally, it's perfectly fine. It's a policy call for the board. Going on to subparagraph C, termination for cause. This was the one that was added that says if there is a problem, you can terminate it for cause, provided we give notice. We could go to court too.
Oh my God.
The part that I added into the proposed language was a definition of just cause. In my world of legaldom, words have meaning, and I don't like something that's as innocuous as just cause is not sufficiently defined for my liking. So I went to Black's Law Dictionary, which is kind of like our little Bible, and I took the definition out of there and I added in here, meaning a legally sufficient reason for termination of the agreement. I'll tell you, in my mind, that's still that's a hole wide enough to drive an elephant through. But at least there's something there, and I feel a little better because it relies on blacks. Going on to subparagraph D, the new termination for non-payment. Originally, this is the one that was mentioned at the meeting about having to pay 2 years worth of amounts due if the district were not to pay an amount due. I said that's in fact I think my words were unconscionable. The counterpoint was brought up that both the village and the city have to make capital commitments, and they have a budget just like we have a budget, and so they have to make capital commitments, and so the counter proposal was 6 months of payment. Okay. Assistance, going on to paragraph 13 on page 8, assistance with liquidation of the building. We went back and forth about, requirements on how to dispose of a building or assets that the district board may deem surplus, and we ended up agreeing, any transfer disposition of assets will be in accordance with laws. We each have different laws to follow, and I kept saying the district has to follow the district laws. Page 9, there were no changes. Page 10, there were no changes. Page 11 is the map, there were no changes. And page 12, what the services being provided, there were no changes. So I just highlight that for the board, and really for you all, so you know some of the reason and logic. And I felt it was my duty to advise the board on why the language is in there. It's all legally proper. Whether it's prudent or appropriate is really a decision for the board of trustees. I've said my piece.
We
Mr.
understand
Graham, you
your
have anything else?
No, I have read this over. We've gone through 2 years of investigations, discussions, research, and I think in looking at it in terms of a long-term solution for providing services, I think it is a good choice at this time. And I think that to put it off, you're never going to see this again, and you're going to put us in a position to where we can determine our future, or we can wait until it's forced upon us.
I agree, and I could go through half an hour's worth of comments, but it's not gonna change the feelings or the thoughts of anybody here. So at this point, I'll entertain them.
Can I interject one thing, Dan,
Yes.
before you do that? I just want to address those 2 points that were brought up. Number one, on the ambulance reimbursement.
What do you want to say?
Federal law requires whoever provides the treatment and transport has to bill. Under our current agreement with Libertyville bills, because that's federal law. That's Medicare and Medicaid. I mean, it has to be that way. And so, but what happens under the current agreement is whatever they collect is considered an offset to what the district pays. And that was part of the equation that went into considering how much the district would pay. Whoever provides a service, if under this agreement, if it's Libertyville or Lake Forest, they have to bill to comply with federal law. But the district indirectly gets a credit for that.
Right.
But I added that provision that said they'll report quarterly how much, so we know how much that is.
Right, and they're within, I think, 50 cents of each other on billing, is that correct, roughly? And you're leveling that 50 cents out?
Anyway, the second point, no comments. This is just me trying to answer some of your questions. The other one, Mr. Prager mentioned the thing about, taxing authority. Taxing authority doesn't change. Taxing authority remains with the Board of Trustees of the Rockland Fire Protection District. As long as the Rockland Fire Protection District exists, districts can go away. I mean, if all the land is annexed by a combination of Lake Bluff and Lake Forest, the district goes away, and then there is nothing to tax. And in that situation, you're right. But as long as the district exists, your taxes are determined by the Board of Trustees, whoever that is. Right now, it's the gang of 3. But what Lake Forest wants, or Libertyville wants, or Lake Bluff wants, or North Chicago wants, is not germane. It's what the Board of Trustees decide.
So if there's small portions of community that are annexed, which reduces our taxing levy, does the rate reduce?
It's a legal question. They won't know that. If you remember, do you remember what happened with the sanctuary?
Yes.
Lake Bluff annexed the sanctuary, and Lake Bluff wanted to pull it in because they provide services. The loss of that revenue would have harmed the district.
Correct.
John Kelly went to court, we fought that, and we prevailed. That's why the sanctuary is still part of the district and not part of Lake Bluff. If the board is so inclined, if you have this mass annexation, it's going to be the board's decision whether they want to pursue to challenge that or not, and have the district dissolved. But that's a decision to be addressed at a later time, if and when it happens.
And what happens when we run out of money and this bankrupts us?
It's
What
not
then
going
happens?
Yeah, you're gonna rent it for $1,000.
All right.
I'm asking legitimate questions.
And I'm telling you, John, that we've run the numbers based on revenue from the existing equipment, revenue from the building, added into the current tax levy, and the numbers work out fine. We've done it with both, Tammy did a spreadsheet, we've worked with Lake Forest and done it, and it goes out way past 20 years before the levy even has to be moved.
And that's taking the building off the top of that, the levy for the building.
Actually, with Tammy, when we take what she did with we're bankrupt at year 13.
No, I disagree with that. We're not.
Read the chart. It
I
says
did
we're
read it,
bankrupt
I
at
did read it,
year
and I'm not gonna
13.
sit here and debate it with you now. We've run the numbers, you're gonna get more than $1,000 rent out of this building.
Oh my God.
Again, that's another question.
You always said you were gonna sell the building.
That's another point I have to bring up. If you get $5,000 a month for this building,
Right,
right?
yeah.
The taxpayers are going to subsidize the remaining $4,000 a month for somebody to rent this building for $5,000?
You're gonna, well, yeah, you're not gonna get the taxpayers are gonna subsidize, it's a loan that already exists. You're
That the
paying
taxpayers are
you're
paying
paying the
on.
loan now, right, John?
Correct,
So,
but it's being-
so if you sold it, you're not gonna get what you owe for it. And if you're gonna rent it out, you're gonna have to go through the next 8 years subsidizing until you end up with the loan paid off.
So a private company could come in here, rent this building,
Right.
and we're gonna subsidize their rent.
We're not gonna subsidize the rent, they're gonna rent the building for what the going rate is, and we're gonna pay the loan. Okay, if you wanna say that, then you can say, okay, if we're gonna rent the building for $5,000 a month, let's renegotiate the loan and take a new loan out for 40 years and make the loan payment half of what it is now. So you can play with numbers all you want to make that work.
Yes, you can.
We need this.
Right. All right. Again, do I have a motion to accept the IGA as presented?
Let's just as amended, because I'll accept the changes and delete my comments.
As amended, the Rockland Fire Protection District, Village of Libertyville, City of Lake Forest, Libertyville Fire Protection District, Fire and Ambulance Service Intergovernmental Agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it. Roll call vote. Trustee Snowden? No.
Are you
Trustee
voting on this
Grom?
right now?
Yes, he is.
Trustee Rogers? Aye. Motion passes. Number 4.
Shame on
You are
you.
disgusting. You don't agree with your own lawyer.
Order, I'll recommend we
Take this another time.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Taking out another holiday.
Okay, number 4
Shame on all
is
of you.
consideration
Shame
of
on
amended
you.
ordinance 2018-01,
Shame.
adopting and approving budget appropriation
Shame.
FY 2018-2019 discussion. Brian, you want to?
just to point out that under the current budget appropriations ordinance, there is no authority to pay.
Okay.
And I made that point, there is no authority to pay. In order to make payments under this agreement, they'll have to adopt an amended budget, and that is a process to go through.
Okay.
Just like adopting the original budget, it has a process to go through. Minimally, it will involve having a proposed budget available at least 30 days before the public hearing on the budget, and then there'll be a notice of when that hearing will be, that has to be at least 30 days before the hearing.
Okay.
So you just can't take money out of the budget now because there is no money in the budget now.
Right, so you want to have a separate budget hearing or a budget workshop to put it together or do you want Tammy to work up a projected one?
Yeah, I shouldn't be the numbers guy. You got to tell me how much to spend. I can help with formatting because I do formatting, but numbers, they don't put accounting classes in law school.
All right,
for a
I'll
reason.
have Tammy contact you direct on the phone. Okay? That's it. Number 5, motion for adjournment.
Shame on you.
Motion to adjourn.
You're not a Knollwood resident.
Shame
Get out
on
of
all
Knollwood,
of you.
Brian. Roger, Dan, get out of Knollwood.
Get the hell out of this town. No one wants you here.